My midlife has not been an easy journey, and I've made it more difficult for myself because of one thing and one thing only, which I'll share in this video. At 44, I had the opportunity to exit the business that I co-founded when I was 30. I seized the opportunity because by then I was burnt out, I was overweight, I was stressed, and I wasn't enjoying it anymore. So when the chance to sell the business came along, my business partner and I seized the opportunity and we both exited the business. At the time, I considered that to be a career break. I was intending to return to work. I was probably going to launch another business. But what actually happened was 1 year suddenly turned into 4, and I decided that I wasn't going to return to full-time work at all. So at 50 years of age, I considered myself retired. And that was the beginning of my challenges. The 50s in particular were a very challenging decade. If I could liken that decade to a mountain, it was a very high, steep and challenging mountain. And here's the mistake that I made. I made the decision to climb that mountain solo. During my business career, I never attempted anything solo. I started my business when I was 30 with a business partner. And over the next decade or so, I surrounded myself with a good team. I employed coaches to help me with all aspects of my leadership skills. I joined a peer group of fellow small business leaders. I didn't do anything on my own. I was firmly of the opinion that you didn't get anywhere by flying solo. Now, for some strange reason, and I can't even tell you why, when I hit my 50s, I decided to approach retirement on my own. I decided to climb that mountain without any help, without any guides, and without any reference to anybody who climbed the mountain before. That was a monumental mistake that set me back 10 years. It took me 10 years of my life before I finally felt that I was happy, fulfilled, rewarded and relevant in my retirement. I'd go so far as to say that I didn't actually achieve that mindset until I was about 62 years of age, so that's only about 2 years ago. The big thing that changed in my life happened around COVID. During one of my other failed attempts to find my way, to find my purpose, I decided to have a go with an organisation to do with executive coaching and peer group formation. And it was there that I met my good friend Andy. And at that point, I stopped flying solo. I was very fortunate to meet Andy because he is actually a qualified coach. And my conversations with Andy led me to completely unpacking all the things that I should have unpacked when I was in my early 50s. It didn't take Andy and I long to realise that the organisation we'd joined wasn't right for us. I won't go into detail as to why that was the case, but it just wasn't right. Andy quit fairly quickly. He decided enough was enough in less than a year. I soldiered on for about 2 years, even though I knew deep down it wasn't right for me. But the one thing that started to happen during those years after COVID, in lots of conversations with Andy, was that he and I started to put together a framework to allow both of us to find something rewarding and relevant for our retirement. We both realised that to build a successful retirement, there were 5 core pillars that needed to be tackled. Now, I was already a big fan of the whole concept of pillars. I already had a 6-pillar operating system, which I've talked about in a previous video. But this one was much more specific about how to dig yourself out of a hole if your retirement isn't going to plan. And that's exactly where I was as I approached the age of about 60. The first 2 pillars laid the groundwork. Number 1, perception, and number 2, purpose. In those 2 pillars, I took a deep dive, and so did Andy, to really get to know myself, to figure out what I was all about, particularly personality. I'm an introvert. I don't like hanging out around with large groups of people. I much prefer to interact on a social basis with small groups of people, and even preferably one-to-one. So that was the first thing. I needed to find something to do that meant I didn't encounter lots and lots of people all at once in person at a big event. Those sort of things just used to drive me crazy. The second thing was purpose. What did I want to do? What did I want to be the purpose in my life? Well, I was very clear on that. It had been there from 50, I just hadn't found the right outlet. And that thing was that I wanted to use my knowledge, the crystallized knowledge, everything that I'd built up, to be able to help other people. And particularly people who were behind me on the journey and were experiencing some of the trauma and some of the challenges and going down some of the cul-de-sacs that I'd gone down. And what I wanted to do was to help them find their way, find a better path, and not go down those cul-de-sacs, and certainly not take 10 years to find a rewarding retirement after they'd decided to retire. The third pillar is prepare. So having figured myself out, figured out what my purpose in life was to be, I needed to prepare. I needed to have a plan, a roadmap, some idea of how I was going to get to the destination. What was I going to do? If I was setting off on a journey, for example, and I am planning a journey to Portugal, a road trip, I'm going to drive all the way from York to the Algarve. But that journey, I've started preparing for that journey by deciding, well, what vehicle am I going to go in? How am I going to get across the channel? Am I going to stay anywhere along the way? What about EV charging, because it'll be in an EV vehicle? What do I need? And it was exactly the same when it came to retirement. I needed a similar roadmap, a similar plan to know where I was going to go. Now, I'm sure by now you realise that the plan and the preparation that went into that was the reason why I decided to launch this YouTube channel. And then it was a case of what do I need to do to be able to make this channel a success. And it was the same with retirement. With those three pillars in place, all that I needed to do now was to get at it. And that's the fourth pillar, proactive. Now in the case of this YouTube channel, dead straightforward, start making some videos. The preparation and the planning and all the research had been done in pillar 3. Now it was time to get on with it and actually make it happen. I prepared myself for the long haul. I thought to myself, well, it's probably going to take me a couple of years at least to get 1,000 subscribers on this channel. So I dug in and prepared, and I was prepared to persevere. And that's the fifth pillar, perseverance, not quitting, keeping at it. Having said that, there is one caveat. Sometimes I stick at things for a little bit too long. Sunk fallacy cost, you might call it. The thing I talked about with me and Andy that didn't work out, I stuck at that for 2 years, far too long. I knew after 6 months it wasn't right for me, but I wasn't prepared to admit it. And I just kept at it, grinding away, trying to do that thing, and it didn't work. So I do think there comes a point where you have to know when to quit. But ultimately, it's all about perseverance. The reason I'm making this video tonight is because earlier today, Andy and I had a live session here on YouTube where we launched our first ever group coaching program called the Retirement Reimagined Accelerator. And I'd love you to join us on the accelerator. I'll leave a link in the description below, and there's also a link appearing on screen now which will give you instructions on how to join. So if you're at the foot of the mountain or you've started climbing up to base camp on your own, now is the time to put together your team. And I hope that you'll consider me and Andy as being guides who can help you on that journey. We've certainly got a lot of experience of climbing the retirement mountains, I can tell you. So that's all for tonight. Hopefully I'll see you in the accelerator. Thanks very much. I'll see you next time.